Hello there, people of the internet. How you guys doing today? I'm doing all right, thanks for asking. So I have a rifle here that kind of sketches me out. I mean, it like really sketches me out. You guys have seen my number 4 Mark 1 numerous times. I don't know what it is with me and just getting really unusual rifles, but this number 4 Mark 1 is the serial number on it doesn't quite match up with any of the records that I've been able to find, so I'm not entirely sure who made this, but I'm pretty sure it's BSA. There's no markings on our band whatsoever, no crown, no nothing, not up on our receiver band either. All this rifle says is M47 1943, so that's all I have to work with besides a couple of markings up here on the barrel, M79 and SNA. I have no idea what that means. Anyway, you guys have seen that rifle before. Well, I recently got my hands on another Enfield rifle. Is anyone familiar with the Ishapur Armory over in India, I believe? Well, Ishapur made number 1 Mark IIIs for a good long while, and I have one of those. I have a 1942 production Ishapur rifle, which sketches me out, man. I have 303 British rounds to put through this rifle. It's not a whole lot of times where I am afraid a rifle is going to detonate whenever I play with it, but this is definitely one of those times. I don't feel 100% safe firing this rifle, so I'm probably just going to stick a couple of rounds through it. That being said, let me tell you why I don't feel safe firing this rifle specifically. This is not an original Ishapur rifle. This is a conversion. Back in the 1960s, late 1950s, somewhere in there, a lot of these Ishapur number 1 Mark IIIs were imported and converted to jungle carbines, or number 5 Enfield rifle lookalikes. This one was done by the Golden State Armory, and I am nervous. I'm nervous about firing this thing because I've seen some of the reviews and some of the malfunctions this rifle has had. Let me show you this thing. Check this out. This is a sketchy rifle right here. Definitely not something that I'm going to stick a whole lot of ammunition through. I'm sure that it could handle it in its original state, but since Golden State Armory got a hold of it, and there's some very clear indication of handcrafted sporterizing on it, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I should trust this rifle or not. My main concern is this flash hider up here. This is just made of pot metal, and the Golden State Armory just glued it on. It's not pinned or anything, it's just glued on. And this was done in the 1960s, so that's some old sketchy glue. There's been a whole lot of reports of these things exploding off the rifle because it's just cheap pot metal. You know, that's all it is. It's just cheap old pot metal. One thing that I have noticed about these rifles, the cocking piece on this thing is round instead of the usual riveted or ribbed cocking piece that I normally find on Enfields. Turns out these right here are something that was put into production in like 1916 or so, although Britain soon went back to the original ribbed cocking piece. So this rifle may have been a World War I rifle that was converted by Ishapur or refurbished by Ishapur in 1942 to be used in World War II, then brought to the States in the 1960s to be turned into this Santa Fe Jungle Carbine lookalike. The carvings on this handguard are extremely crude, definitely handmade. The muzzle flash on this thing just, it really makes me nervous, guys. It really does. This is an old rifle and makes me nervous. Firing old rifles that I don't know much about is nerve-wracking alone, let alone something that's been converted twice or refurbished twice from, you know, 100 years ago, that is known for blowing up. So I'm sure that this one right here will do okay. My main concern is this flash hider up here. I'm sure the action is going to be just fine. It's standard No1Mk3 action, and those are extremely strong actions. Not quite as strong as Mauser, but still strong enough. And the ammunition I'm firing today is underpowered, so we shouldn't have any problems whatsoever firing it out of this rifle, assuming that this right here does not explode. Let me show you guys these sights. These sights right here are pretty much useless in every sense of the word. First off, they are clearly aftermarket sights. I'm not sure who added these sights on there, but they are clearly aftermarket. I'm not sure if it was GSA, Golden State Armory, or the guy who did this handguard here. Kind of looks like a different type of wood too. Maybe it was just missing an upper handguard. This guy fabricated his own handguard for this thing. But these sights are very, very loose. Like they jiggle around all over the place. They do have little locking notches to hold them somewhat in position, but man, like you could breathe on these things and they just doop. I don't think that you're going to be very accurate with this thing at all, especially at long ranges. Not only that, but if you're using your short range sights, you can't load in stripper clips because your long range sights get in the way of that. So since we are at short range, I'm going to be using the short range sights. So I'm going to have no choice but to single load these. Not too big of a deal out here on the range, but if you're fighting in combat at 50 yards, you don't want to use your long range sight. You're gonna want to use that short range sight, but you also are going to want stripper clips. Whoever designed that, that's a terrible, terrible design. That these are so loose and flopping around. Like the screw on it is tight too. That's just the way that they are. Anyway, I'm gonna load up one round in this thing, see if it explodes, guys. If this explodes and kills me, it's been fun. I do some sketchy stuff for you guys, and this right here is definitely one of the sketchier things. But you know what they say, no guts, no glory. No guts, no glory. Famous last words. One round. This right here is the determining factor as to whether or not I lose my face. Went into battery just fine. Let's fire it downrange. Wow, this thing kicks like a freaking mule. Holy crap. I was not expecting a kick like that. This right here is a light carbine, but holy crap, guys. Alright, one thing I was concerned about was whether or not this thing would stay in battery. Looks like with the pressure of that cartridge, this thing did in fact stay in battery. Let's look for any deformations. Definitely have some primer bulging there in the back, but it doesn't look too bad. I have definitely seen worse in my time. What is that right there? Is that factory mark? Alright, yeah. That's just a factory mark. I'm not seeing any bulging or cracking anywhere else besides the primer. Alright, cool. Looks like our little flash hider up here held up okay. There is a little ding in the side, and that is what really concerns me. Okay, well, I'm gonna load up another round and fire it because I'm feeling gutsy today. Alright, yeah, this thing right here stays in battery pretty good. The only reason I was concerned about it staying in battery, doesn't extract the rounds very well. I don't see any deformation on this one either, which is good. That's very good. The only concern I had with this thing staying in battery was whenever you dry fire the gun, I've never had an Enfield do this bad. I've had a couple of Enfields do this pretty bad, but it was never this bad. Look at that. Look at how much movement we have in that bolt. Look at how, I mean, there's just this little tiny bit right here holding this thing in battery on that locking lug. And it made me nervous at first, but I guess the pressure from the cartridge holds it in place. So that's good enough for me. Damn, my shoulder hurts. All right, let's do another one. Man, this thing freaking kicks. Alright, let's really give that extractor some ham and see if it, give the extractor some ham. That's the quote I'm using. Let's give that extractor some ham and see if it launches that case out any easier. Oh, hey look, it actually launched it out. Alright, let's fire a couple rounds through this thing. This thing freaking kicks. Also, whenever I fire it, I feel a little bit of back pressure coming from the cartridge. I'm not sure what that's about, but I did feel a little bit of back pressure come from that specific cartridge. It doesn't look ruptured. I'm looking at it right now on the ground. Looks all right to me. Even the primer on it looks all right. Okay, 2 rounds. Okay, well, now that I've fired a couple of rounds through this thing, I do feel more comfortable with it. I mean, at first, I gotta admit, man, my heart was just absolutely racing. I'm going to pull this camera away from the wind a little bit. I was going to not shoot this thing. Like, I even made a video on me not shooting this thing, but I decided to grow those balls, take it out of the range and fire it off. I had no idea how it was going to function, but it functioned all right. I did run it through a couple of tests just to see how safe this thing actually would be to shoot. It didn't exactly pass all of them, but it does fire. Actually, it's kind of fun to fire other than that recoil. It does have this nice rubber butt plate on it, which is kind of useless. It's actually very much useless whenever you're talking about getting hit with this thing. I wonder how many rounds have actually gone through this rifle at any point in time. Man, those sights on this thing are really getting in the way of me loading this thing. I think I'm gonna have to flip them back to load, then flip them forward again. I'm probably just gonna take them off and put them on properly, but that's an adventure for another time. For right now, I'm gonna fire this thing again. You want to talk about some serious concussive wave, like even with this flash hider, I'm just being hit with this massive slew of concussive wave. All right, now, I know that this right here is a No1Mk3. That's fine and dandy. At this point, it's basically a No. 5 conversion. So, something to take note of. Alright, now that I've fired a couple rounds to this thing, I'm going to gather up the shells and see what they look like. Make sure that there's no deformations or bulging of any sort. Nope, these shells look just fine. I think that we're going to do alright with this rifle, other than that flash hider. Man, that thing still makes me nervous. I'm probably not going to, use this rifle as a rifle that I'd put 1,000 rounds through. Hell, I don't think that I could do that, to start with. I don't think my shoulder could physically handle it. One thing I can say is my No. 4 Mark I rifle is definitely nicer to shoot, but that's just because it's a heavier rifle. I wonder what the actual story is behind this rifle. I wonder what this rifle here has gone through, seen, done, etc., etc. Well, I do have a few more rounds. I guess I'll load them up and fire them downrange. I don't know a whole lot about this rifle. If you know more about this rifle, like the sight situation on it, or hell, just anything in general, by all means, I'm more than willing to listen. If you make some good points, I'll go ahead and make an updated video on that. I tell you what, guys, that poor grill out there, it's been through so much. It doesn't even look like a grill anymore, and that's good. That's exactly where we want to be. All right, I got a couple of targets out there now. I got 5 rounds left. Let's lob them down range. Hopefully this thing won't explode in my face. These sights are kind of useless, guys. Okay, well, either way, this was fun. Let's take a trip inside and look at this rifle right here. I'll give you a quick history behind where this rifle has come from, and we will look at this rifle a little bit more close. We'll look at this rifle a little closely and see if we can figure out some stories behind it. Alright, here we go. I tried getting this one done a lot sooner. Unfortunately, life just got in the way. So this is a couple of days later since I took this thing out to shoot, but doesn't mean I'm not going to bite the bullet, take my time to go over this rifle. Alright, now, there's a lot of history behind the Enfield series. So much history, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to cover it all in a decent amount of time to make a YouTube video. So, I'm basically going to give you guys a crash course on this rifle and where this rifle came from. So this rifle is an Ishapur-made No1Mk3. Ishapur did not make any of the No. 4 series. They only made the No. 1 series. This one is dated 1942, which, well, those who are familiar with the Ishapur Enfields normally depict them as being rifles chambered in 308. However, this one here is chambered in 303 British. Being dated in 1942, the 308 was not around until the mid-1960s when accepted by NATO, so if it's not in existence, it can't exactly be adopted in the rifle being made. That's why this rifle right here is currently existing in 303. So although it is dated 1942, I believe this may have possibly been an earlier rifle that was refurbished for use in World War II by Ishapur. The cocking piece back here is round and not the standard Enfield cocking piece that you would normally see. 1960 or 1916 and a few years beyond that, blacksmiths started using this type of cocking piece. However, it was very quickly reverted back to the original cocking piece that you would mostly see on Enfield rifles nowadays. It is because of that cocking piece right there that I believe that this rifle, or at least the bolt itself, is from a rifle that is before the date 1942, which is what this one is dated at. Anyway, so if my theory is true, then this is a refurbishment of a refurbishment. it's very possible that this right here was a World War I era rifle that was refurbished and recreated for World War II use. However, in the 1960s, Santa Fe, Golden State Armory, imported a whole bunch of rifles, and they had a conversion program to convert number 4s and number 3, or number 4s and number 1 Mark 3s to jungle carbines, which is exactly what we're looking at right here. This conversion took place in the 1960s and was not very impressive at all. The upper handguard on this thing is not a Golden State Armory factory upper handguard. This right here looks like it has been done by somebody in his workshop with a file. The rear sights here as well also look like they are not really supposed to be there, and I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, that they are not actually supposed to be there. At least not in this configuration, because in this configuration the 300-yard battle sight directly blocks, or using the 300-yard battle sight directly stops you from putting stripper clips into your gun. So that's a very clear indication that this sight is not supposed to be that way. As I discussed previously, the flash hider on this thing, whereas it is technically cosmetically correct for a jungle carbine, it's just pot metal. It's just pot metal that's been glued onto the front of the barrel there. It's been threaded and glued. So sense of warning to anyone who is deciding to get one of these. Those are notorious for exploding and flying apart. Alright, so we covered very, very, very quick history and where I believe this rifle right here came from. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys back here to actually check out this rifle from a more direct view. Alright, taking a look right at this thing. On the band of the receiver there, we have a GRI, which is the Ishapore cartouche. We have that noted twice, right next to each other, right here on the receiver. Looks like we have some sort of stock repair, probably done by the Ishapore Armory. I don't foresee that right there being done by Golden State. They probably would have just replaced the stock in general. Up here's our cast iron flash hider, complete with a bayonet lug. I would never try sticking a bayonet on this thing, but to each their own. The literature on the barrel here is a little worse for wear. It was printed out in the 1960s, early 1970s, so it does have some longevity on it. However, it still very clearly says Santa Fe Jungle Carbine Mark I, MD 12011, Golden State Arms Corp, Pasadena, California. Right here's our upper handguard. Looks like somebody with a file just kind of etched out the design that they wanted to have. Here's a real close-up of our front sight here. We got the 300-yard battle sight up, and you can very clearly see how the 600-yard battle sight is basically stopping you from using stripper clips at any point in combat. There's the 600-yard post up, just for fun. I mean, this way you can stick stripper clips in there, but you gotta hope that the enemy is as far away as possible. Here's our rear cocking piece along with our safety lever. Nothing too special going on here other than the cocking piece being round, which leaves me to believe that this was a World War I era gun, or at least World War I era bolt. It is possible that perhaps the blacksmith just so happened to have some of these cocking pieces left over, and he decided to throw one of these on this bolt to make it functioning because the previous cocking piece no longer functioned. That is a possibility, but not necessarily what I would consider the most likely scenario. There's a huge rubber recoiled butt pad right on the back, which is accurate when talking about a jungle carbine of this configuration. The sling on this rifle does actually look accurate for a jungle carbine. I'm not sure if that was added by Golden State Armory or if it is a legitimate Jungle Carbine sling. Not sure what the story is behind that. There's no markings on it whatsoever, so I guess we'll never know. There's a really large, very clear indication on the back butt right here that somebody made some stock repair. That's not exactly an issue, it's just something to take notice to. Up here on the receiver, all we have is our serial number, along with an M, probably an inspector's mark of some sort. Perhaps that is the blacksmith that swapped out our cocking piece. It's very, very faint there on the cocking piece, but we do have an arrow along with two other insignias that I can't quite make out with my eye. Perhaps I'll grab a magnifying glass and check that out at a later point in time. Right, here's our markings that I brought up earlier. GRI, that is the Ishapur factory in India. 1942 date production on this. However, like I said, I believe it could possibly be earlier, No1Mk3. This is clearly a Jungle Carbine conversion made out of a No1Mk3. There is a star above the 3 indicating conversion. Other than that, that's pretty much all I know about this rifle right here. Not the safest to shoot, but not exactly unsafe to shoot. This right here is, you know, decades old. I'm sure if that flash hider up there was going to blast apart, it would have done that by now. So I should be safe when firing this thing, but time is the greatest wear on basically any mechanical device, including rifles. Well guys, I'd like to thank you for watching. I certainly had fun shooting this thing. It did scare me. It was very nerve-wracking shooting this thing. But after I got more comfortable with it, I realized that this right here is actually a pretty fun rifle to take out to the range. 303 Brit ammo is pretty cheap and readily available, even in modern times, so I think this rifle right here did alright. If you like this type of content, go ahead and mash that subscribe button, because I do crap like this all the time. I'm always coming up with new and unique rifles that I somehow manage to get my hands on. I have no idea how I get my hands on half this stuff, but I manage. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. And this right here is what I enjoy. Things that are out of the ordinary that I can't exactly explain whenever it comes to firearms. For the most part, I know what this gun is. However, there are some mysteries behind this gun. Like, is this a refurbishment of a World War I rifle? That cocking piece right there kind of indicates that, but it's not a guarantee that that is the case. There's a lot that I do know about this rifle, and there's a lot that I don't know, and probably will never know, which is, it's alright, but it's just one of those things that's going to be in the back of your head. Every military surplus collector has exactly that situation. Looking at a rifle being like, would you look at that? I wonder what the story is behind that. But whoever did that, you know, probably died 100 years ago in a combat zone. There's no telling what some of these rifles have actually gone through, and this right here is a very clear example of that. So like I said, if you like this kind of stuff, mash that subscribe button, because I do this kind of stuff all the time. If you want to consider supporting, I do have a Patreon page. Go check that out. I got various bloopers, behind the scenes content. I got little bits of information from my mental support pages. Got some real cool information going on there. If you want to go check that out, link in the description. If you want to consider supporting, can't help out financially, that's fine. I completely understand. I get it. Trust me, I'm in the same exact boat. I understand if you can't help out financially. Go ahead and mash that subscribe button like you really mean it. Like, get all up in there and mash that subscribe button, and you will definitely help out plenty if you can't help out financially. Anyway, I've been awake for like 40 hours now, so I'm going to take this video, review and edit it, upload it, and go to sleep. I think I've earned a good night's rest. So, you guys have yourself a fantastic